I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves while Charles is talking. I'm going to say that he needs no introduction because he has spoken and shared the wealth of knowledge and his experiences so graciously. And each story resonates with a new angle and a new twist that touches my heart. So let's move on and go right to Charles to bless this Amartithi 56 year, I believe. Charles, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Diane. And let me just say the feeling is mutual. I love you and Terry so much. And it's so wonderful to be with everybody on this special day. I feel very privileged to have been asked to share on a day like this. I will say that we will have a hard stop at noon to enter silence. And then at 12:15, if we're still going, I'm happy for us to keep sharing and talking. But I just wanted to sort of alert you to that and myself, remind myself to do that. Yes, it's true that our time is different from the time in India or the time in California or the time in Australia and all of that. But it doesn't matter because in reality, Baba says there is no time and only his time. So just to remember him in those moments is enough. It doesn't matter if it syncs with anything else. So I'm very happy we can do that together today. Well, 56 Amartithi, such a amazing thing to me to think that it's been that time. Baba said, he said, I live in the eternal present. And so what we call Amartithi, or the eternal date, and we could say this of really every significant event in the life of the avatar, is actually now, from his perspective. It's now. Because Baba says that he lives in the eternal now. There is nothing else but the eternal now. So yeah, 56 years, we say, but it isn't really. And truth, he says, it isn't really 56 years, it's now. And coming again, well, yes, 700 years, 14, whatever it is, it's not really. According to him, I don't know, but according to him, it's now. It's now. Because he says, whether in human form or in no human form, Baba says, I simply am. I am. And thinking about that in anticipation of sharing with you today, I thought of the first meeting my mother had, my mother Jane, and some of you knew, had with Meher Baba on, May 19th, 1958. And she didn't know much about Baba, but she came. She was linked through Elizabeth, and she wanted to love him. She wanted to know him, but Baba had not really yet given her a recognition of her connection to him. So she came full of enthusiasm and curiosity and entered that little lagoon cabin that I think most of you, if not all of you, have been in the little lagoon cabin at the center. And there he was. And in those first moments, she was she didn't know how to take it in. There he was, and she was trying to take it in. And the only thing she could think of to say when she looked at him was something Elizabeth told her that he hadn't been well. And growing up in the South, when someone hasn't been well, what do? You say, well, oh, you look so well. I was told you hadn't been well. And Baba looked at her and he said, no, no one has any idea. No one has any idea of my suffering. And that was actually the first thing he said to her. Uh, and a few minutes later, she was looking at him. There were some others in the room, and she was looking at him and trying to take it in. Who is this? And Baba looked up at her and he said, do not look at this form, Jane. I am not this body. I am not this body. Imagine her first meeting, first few minutes, and that's what he said. I am not this body. She had no idea what he meant. But Baba has said over the years so many times that the divine plan, which apparently is all there is, the perfect plan, as it were, that emerged, he says, in the original whim. The perfect plan is that the avatar must take a human form, as we know. He must subject himself to the limitations of illusion, of Maya. Otherwise, Baba said, how could he awaken us, himself in us, to the truth that he is not the body, but rather our true self? So the body is to awaken us to the truth that he isn't the body. And the more he awakens us, the more we realize that, right? And as I was remembering what Mother heard from Baba that first day, I thought, well, how did I experience his body as a child? I hadn't quite thought of it that way before for some reason. I mean, of course, uh, children, all of my memories, with Baba were as a child. And so fortunately, Baba has, by his grace, given me the picture of what happened when I was with him. And it's very vivid and it's very alive. But the body, I thought, well, Baba is saying to my mother, I am not the body. And then, but how did I experience the body? There it was. And I realized that I was 8, almost 9, and I can only say that now, looking back, I think I found him very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Now, that wasn't because of how he looked, though, exactly. I mean, I realize that now. It wasn't that Baba appeared as some, beautiful person out of a magazine or, whatever it is we imagine somebody beautiful to be. But beautiful because of what he made me feel at that moment when I met him and when I was with him. What I guess you could say he awakened in me. Beautiful. So the body, the physical body, stirred a recognition. And that's probably true of everyone here today and everyone who will listen to this, right? I mean, that photograph, that film,
Yeah.
that image stirred some recognition. Otherwise, how would we know? that the one we were waiting for had come or is here or however we want to think about it. We wouldn't. And which just underscores what Baba meant that he had to take, what God's plan is. There's no way out except by him taking a form. Means there's no way out of our ignorance except by him taking a form. There's no way out. We wouldn't recognize ourselves, our true selves, otherwise without the form. At least that's what I gather from him. I don't know, but that's what it seems like, right? To me. And every person who loves Meher Baba, I think I have heard tell their story. It's very much the same that way. Sometimes it's a book, you know. I remember Elizabeth, and I hope everyone, when I say these names, I forget that she's been gone so many years, but some of you, but Elizabeth Patterson, Baba's close disciple, and she was our link to Baba, my family's link to Baba, so I often refer to her, but I remember one day she was showing my mother some photographs, and I apologize if I've told you this, but it sticks with me so much that it keeps coming back to me. It was a small incident, but it sticks with me. She was showing Mother photographs of Baba that she had taken over the years. She loved to take photographs of Baba, and all the time in India, she was taking some of the greatest photographs ever taken of Baba, I think. And when she left India in 1941, I don't think she ever took a photograph again. In fact, if she did, I don't think she did. Even when she went back to India in the late 40s, I think that was it. She took them and that was it. But she had a lot of them, and Mother wanted photographs for the little book she was putting together of excerpts from the Meher Baba journals, Elizabeth's articles and things Baba had said and all this. Treasures, it's now called. There's a little book. And she said, Elizabeth, could you give me some photos for the book? And so Elizabeth brought out some photos and was showing her, and Mother was looking. Mother said, "Oh, well, this one really, I don't know. This one doesn't really look like Baba. Let's put this aside." And Elizabeth said, "Well, Jane, I said that to Baba once when I was showing him these photographs. After I would take them to him and I would have them developed and take them to him, and I would say, here they are, Baba, for him to see. And I'm going through them, and I come to one that I didn't think was a very good photograph of him. It wasn't beautiful of him in my eyes. So I said, oh, Baba, let me take that out. That's not very good of you." And Baba said, no, no, don't do that. Because he said, you see, you may not think that's a beautiful photograph of me, but someday someone will. He said, every one of the photographs will touch someone someday. And Elizabeth never forgot that. And so the body was the way we recognize him. I mean, we could say, well, in one lifetime with him, we have the opportunity to be with him when the body is physically there. Other lifetimes, it's the image. With Saint Mira, who loved him so much, it was a statue. Didn't mean she didn't recognize him more or less than any one of his other very, very close saints. That was just the way he came to her, in a statue. So who knows how he will do it, but it's the image. And I thought, embracing Baba, uh, feeling Baba's touch, these physical things, or seeing his glance over in my direction. Um, every time I didn't think it so much as felt it. Oh, it's him. It's Baba. It's him. Like that. It's him. Just like sometimes I think in your life and mine today, we have these moments when something happens or there's a gesture or there's uh, just a moment where oh, that's Baba. It's like that. And so it was so familiar, as so many who describe meeting Meher Baba in the physical form, many of them say the same thing. So familiar. And for me, now looking back, it really felt like Baba and I were picking up from where we left off, if you were, as it were. We were picking up from wherever it was we left off. That's how it felt. It didn't seem new at all. But his fragrance was unmistakable to me. Others have had something like this that they say, but uh, there's no way that I can describe his fragrance, and I call it fragrance because I don't know what else to call it. What do you call something? You could say atmosphere or aura, but that doesn't really capture because it does seem more uh, not like perfume, maybe than just sort of a atmospheric thing. It seems much more real than that to me. So I call it his fragrance. I don't know, but it's unmistakable to me, his fragrance. Uh, and whatever body he takes, the ones who are waiting for him, who are ready to recognize him, are going to know that it's him, whatever form it takes. I remember outside, reading as a child outside the tomb of Jesus, on Easter morning, as it were, the first Easter. And there is Mary Magdalene. She, the the women were the first to see him, or to find the tomb empty, I should say. First of all, they found the tomb empty. And there was Mary Magdalene outside the tomb, as I remember the story, and the empty tomb. Um, and a man comes there, and she's startled, and she thinks, oh, it must be the gardener, who tends to this place. And she said, well, sir, kind sir, can you tell me, where have they taken my Lord? His tomb is empty. And the man she took to be the gardener, he looked at her and he said, Miriam. And she said, Lord, it's you. Just the word gave away who he is. Not the appearance, not the shape or form, but something else. I don't know, as children, if you had the experience sometimes, I think I've heard some people describe something like this as children, where I did anyway, at Hope Valley, where we lived in Durham when I was growing up, before we met Baba. He was there, when I was very young, and we left when I was 7. So must have been when I was 5 or 6, something like that. And I remember looking in the living room of our very big ranch house. And there would be people there doing different things. My parents had a lot of social events, and I don't know, people were milling around doing whatever it is. And it would strike me that it felt like they were all in a play. They were playing some part. And I didn't know what the play was, and I didn't know my part, or that I even had a part. I felt like I was just watching it, and they all were aware of it and in on it, and I wasn't. Maybe some of you've had that experience. It stuck with me all my life. Why? Because it was my first experience of the world as being unreal, as being a play. And then Baba later, I read, said so many times that that's exactly what it is. It's a play. It's a film that was taken long ago. And when the lights go up, when it's over, then we realize, oh, it was just a play. Everyone was playing their role. I was watching it. I was identifying with it, which is like the Baba says, the true self. Watching, we do. We think we're in it. We're not in it. Baba says we're not in the drama. But yes, here we are. I'm in the drama. No, Baba says you identify so strongly with the character there, the lead character, you in the story, that you think you're in it. It's real. It's your story. It's your life, my life. Baba says it's not. It's just a play. But he says, when I awaken you, the lights will go up and you'll realize, oh, it was all just a play. But he said, it's a play or a film or whatever you say, worth watching, because by watching, you wake up. That's the means by which I wake you up. The lights go up only by watching. Sometimes I look back on those days in Hope Valley as a small child, and my memories of that time, and maybe it's because the photographs of that time were in black and white, but I don't know. But my memories of that time are all in black and white. So so odd to think that they're all in black and white. I don't remember any colors. But then after meeting Baba in 1958, my memories of him in that time, every single moment is in living color, as though it's real. Whereas those other memories are not. Makes me remember uh, Kitty always wanting a television. When we were first at Yukon Dunes and then Del Ruba. Of course, I was a very small child, but I remember Kitty always thought it would be, when it came along, nice to have a television. It's the news and this and that. And of course, she loved concerts, things like that. So she always thought, oh, it'd be nice to have a television. And Elizabeth, of course, uh, well, I say of course, but if you knew her, I mean, she didn't want a television, you know, this thing. And she would tell Kitty, she said, well, you see, it doesn't look real. It was black and white. She said, it doesn't look real. That would be her response. And then she said to mollify Kitty one day, she said, well, when they get color, maybe then we can get a television. And of course they did get color, and she still didn't get the television right away. But someone finally gave them one. When people started coming in the '60s, they gave them one, and of course it was black and white. So poor Elizabeth, I called her Auntie Boo. Poor Auntie Boo. She had to, at night when Kitty wanted to watch something, and she would put up with it for a few minutes and then she'd leave, but she had to watch the black the black and white, which to her didn't seem at all real. But anyway, so that's what makes me think of Baba, and being with Baba is in living color, and everything else is in black and white. Well, of course, then Baba left the center, right? He returned to India. That's how it is. Uh, you know, back in what we call the real world, you know, he got on an airplane. He was gone, and uh, and it was a great sort of shock to my system, not because I didn't understand that he had to go, but it was like, well, I was suspended in time, and then suddenly time intervenes, or seems to. And I remember wandering around the center after Baba left, physically, you know, and wandering around because, of course, that's where I was with him, and alone. I was a loner. I was not with anybody. I just would wander around. Um, and I would, you know, imagine him there and think of him and all that. And he felt very absent. He wasn't there around the corner, and at the same time, very present. And sometimes, the more I felt his absence, the greater I felt his presence. But isn't that what life is with Baba for us as his lovers? I mean, I won't speak for anybody else, but isn't that the case? The, the very absence, the very longing to be with him is what makes him feel so present sometimes, so close. They go together, like, I guess, two sides of a coin. Without that longing, without that sense of his absence, there is no experience of his presence, his beauty, his love. I mean, it doesn't end the longing because that's always there, I suppose, until we become one with him. But it it makes us feel um, that he's with us. We miss him, and he's with us. The body was far away. I knew that. It was in India. But Baba was there. He was at the center. And that's what happened for the next 4 years, you could say. You know, as if we're going back to the scene in the play, as it were, so 4 years of it, which was a long, long time for me as a child, you know, it's an eternity for a child, 4 years, and waiting and waiting for Baba to call, to say, come to India, come to be with me. That was at least what I lived for. I think I wasn't alone. Uh, Honestly, every uh, time the phone rang, I thought this might be it. And you say, well, why would that be? Well, first of all, the phone didn't ring all that much because we didn't we, we didn't have cell phones. I mean, it was a big deal. A call was a call, right? It wasn't you couldn't text either. So a call was something meant something. And there weren't these ad calls and so forth. So some of you are old enough to remember these days where a call was a real call. And also, the only way you would know if Baba were calling you urgently or meaningfully or right now, usually it was a cable. It was a cable. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a telephone call, but it would be Western Union. So if you picked up the phone and it said Western Union, Baba is calling us to him. And so that's what I lived for, is that call. And finally it came. Well, of course, typical of Baba, it came and it went. I mean, Baba always said the East-West gathering will be, I think, if I remember correctly, something like May of 1963 or two, excuse me. And oh my gosh, so soon, wonderful, you know. And then word came, no, Baba has canceled that. It'll be November, you know, so like that. So that's how Baba was. You know, he gets your anticipation and then he takes it away and then he gives it again. By the time you get there, of course, your longing has been increased so much. You know, Baba just gives you this sense of anticipation, right, by all of these changes, and finally you get there. But at the same time, those 4 years of longing, waiting, I also was getting to know him, because simultaneously I was living with Baba those years. And, you know, I mean, I was in school and doing things, but I was always a sort of a quiet child and, you know, played by myself. And, you know, so a lot of interior life was real life for me, not so much the things I did outside. And so, you know, Baba was, pictures of Baba, anything to do with Baba, you know, would be sort of exciting and wonderful, and new photographs would come from India. And you might think, well, new photographs, well, aren't there so many? There weren't so many. There were not really many photographs available. And Mani would send photographs, maybe her brother Baram, put together, or whatever it was, and that he took, and she would send them to Beryl Williams. Some of you know of her, who lived in New York, African American, close friend of our family, wonderful, beautiful disciple of Baba. And it was Beryl's job to let you know when the photographs came and what they were. Right? That was her job. We didn't have any other way to see photographs except from Beryl. I mean, it sounds so strange. Well, at least in New York. I don't know what other people did, but so Beryl would have this notebook, and she'd put the photographs in the notebook, you know, in the plastic in the notebook, and then she would come to your house and she would sit with us in the living room, and with great excitement, and she would open the notebook, and there he'd be, you know, another image that we hadn't seen before. It was so exciting. Everyone was so precious because it was so rare. So I was getting to know him. I was enjoying him. But you know, our interior life with Baba, I won't speak for anybody but myself, but I think it's maybe a common experience. Our interior life with Baba is our own. It's not like anyone else's, which is why I think every relationship that a Baba lover has with Baba is unique. It's not like anyone else's. Now, do we sometimes, you know, try to suggest to other people that there should be more like ours, or more like whatever we think it is that it's supposed to be? Sure, we do that. We do that. And you know, it's the human tendency to say, well, this is what it is to follow Baba. This is what it is. And this person over here, you know, they have no idea, you know, like that. I mean, this is the human condition, but I always remember what Elizabeth used to do in some situations where that would come up, and people might complain, or Mother and Kitty and Margaret, might be in the living room in Delruba, and something would come up that someone had done in the community, and that they didn't think reflected well on Baba, something like that. And how can they do that? And they love Baba. And I remember one day she looked at them and she looked at all of us and she said, well, that's between them and Baba. That was it. I thought, that's so true. Now you say, well, then why did she correct people at the center? Well, she did, their behavior. Because she said, you see, I can't say what people do in their own lives. That is between them and Baba. I can only say what they do at the center because that's what Baba gave me. And that is how she saw it. But it's true. Everyone has their own relationship to Baba. It may be like no one else's, but it is just as authentic and real and close to Baba as anyone else's. That's how he says. I don't know. So the time did come where my Baba, if you will, was there in me, with me, 4 years of that Baba. And then the time came to go see him again in India, in human form. And uh, I was so excited, of course, thrilled. I mean, this was the thing we had all been waiting for. Uh, it seemed like forever. And now we were going to actually see him again. Well, very wonderful thing. Um, but the closer it got, the more an anxiety would creep in. It wasn't the overwhelming emotion. The overwhelming emotion was just excitement at the idea of seeing Baba and happiness. But there was this anxiety underneath. And what was it? It was something like, what if my Baba isn't Baba? Or what if Baba isn't my Baba? Either way. I mean, you might say, well, why would you think that? Well, because uh, uh, I didn't know. I had been living with him for 4 years. So what might it be? What might it be to see him? Would it be the one I had lived with, or would it be something else? I didn't know. I didn't know. So we went, and that little anxiety was with me as we traveled there. I have to pick a dog bone. Charlie wants his bone. Ha, this is life with dogs. Um, Wonderful, but annoying. Uh, and we arrived in Pune. There was, this is the first time, of course, I'd been there, and Guru Prasad was where Baba was going to see us. And we were to see Baba. The men and women went separately first day of darshan, which sometimes Baba would do, the Westerners. The Easterners in the afternoon, the Westerners in the morning. We would be there with the Easterners, but in the morning it'd be just the Westerners. And we were told to arrive at a certain time. The women went first, and then the men. So we did. A bus took us there and all that. And we lined up outside the door of Guru Prasad. We of course, as we got near the door, we would take our shoes off and wait our turn to go through the doors and be with him. I got closer and closer as the line moved. And I was very happy and excited, but then that anxiety began to stir. And the closer I got, the more I thought, well, wait, what if it isn't Baba that I've come to know? What will I do? You might say, well, doesn't he look like the Baba you saw in 1958? Well, no, that wasn't the thing, you know. I mean, it didn't matter how he looked. Of course, he looked like the Baba with 58, more or less. He was older and his suffering was more apparent. So there are differences, but that wasn't an anxiety. The anxiety was I had gotten to know him better in the interim, and now is it him? And I got to the door and I looked in, and all I could see were all these people in front of me, you know, adults bigger than I was 13, you know, and you know, going towards Baba, and but I couldn't see Baba at the other end. It was a rather large room. And so I was looking in at the crowd and the people before I crossed the threshold, and suddenly I saw a hand dart up into the air. And that was Baba. The gesture was Baba. The hand was Baba. And I knew that it was Baba, my Baba. I don't know how, why, the hand or the gesture, but it, and at the same time I crossed the threshold and there was the fragrance that I associated with Baba, that his fragrance. And so then I knew this is Baba. And my Baba is Baba. Now, through my life, all these years, my Baba has changed, sometimes dramatically in some ways, but it's always my Baba. It's not someone else's. It's not an idea of Baba. It's not what people tell me that he is, or should, including Mandli. As much as I learned from them and as much as I felt they really showed me some aspect of Baba that I would never have known if I hadn't been with them. Elizabeth, Kitty also, Margaret. As much as that's all true, it wasn't my Baba. And the minute I fell into the trap of that being, well, is that what I should be feeling? Is that how I should see Baba? Baba would, something would happen and Baba would explode that dependency, that leaning on someone else's idea of Baba or experience of Baba. And that's my experience anyway. And that was very defining for my life, that being able to have that. I mean, I strayed from it from time to time and got lost in thinking somebody else knew better than I about Baba, you know, but I would always come back to Baba within me. You know, and after the East-West Gathering, Baba did go into seclusion a pretty, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And the closer the time got where he was going to leave aside his body, the more seclusion. And at one point, no letters, no cables, no visitors. You know, Baba told the Mandali, you know, they put up a sign about no visitors. And he said, even if God were to come to the Meherazad gate, don't let God in. Even if God. That's a laugh. That's pretty significant right there. And nobody means nobody. And what happened was that he weaned, among other things, he was finishing his universal work, he said, whatever that means. But what happened in our lives, or at least in my life, and I think others, we were weaned from his physical form. If we had any dependency left, you know, Elizabeth, of course, always asked Baba if she was going to do something for Baba. She said, she always used to tell me, if you're going to do something for Baba, ask him. And in his physical life, she asked him physically, his physical body. She had the opportunity. She was the exception to the rule. She could write to India when nobody else could. In fact, she and Norina were the only Westerners allowed to contact Baba and be in touch with Baba during the New Life. That they were the only exceptions. So she always had that privilege because she never abused it and because Baba depended on her for his work so fully. So she wanted to do something, she'd ask Baba. And that usually meant writing to Mani in those days because Mani was our link to Baba, our family, and Elizabeth's link to Baba that way. We never wrote to Adi, which was how most people communicated with Baba those days. We only wrote to Mani, and Mani would write to us, and she would ask Mani that if it was possible to bring this before Baba. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't, but that's how it was. But it became clear, though, as this was unfolding, that Baba's answer was going to be very similar now. And that would be something along the lines, Baba says, do your best. Do what you think is best. And I will be there helping you. That would be the answer. And so what happened was that even while Baba was still in human form, in a physical body, she had to depend on uh, listening to what he wanted her to do inside. By the time he put aside that body, that had become the norm for her, you know. Uh, Baba knew what he was doing in that sense for all of us. Uh, Even those of us who didn't see him very often, right? But including those in India who used to see him all the time, and now suddenly, like Adi Senior, his secretary, wasn't allowed to come to Meherazad during the last years. He would go back to his office after being turned away. He would take something to deliver, and he'd say, "Can I see Baba?" No. Turned him away, the closest of the close. And then he'd go back to his office and he would weep and he would weep and he would weep. He told me this. He's probably told some of you this. And then after Baba left the body, he realized how compassionate Baba was to him in those years. How compassionate. Because by not allowing him to see him physically very much, he weaned him away. And so he was prepared when Baba left. He said, I don't think I could have stood the shock if Baba hadn't done that. So he said, Charles, don't ever think Baba doesn't know what he's doing. Baba knows what he's doing. Now, when Baba did drop the body, um, despite the shock, of realizing that I would, no matter what, I would not see him again in that body. I I felt it was the culmination of the dynamic in life with Baba of leave taking and inner awakening that had been building for years. Now, as you know, Baba called everyone to India before he dropped the body, the physical body, and said he was going to give darshan. And of course, we were excited and happy, we began planning to do that. And it was set for certain times, and people were given certain dates. This group will come this week, this group will come that week. And meanwhile, Baba's health was getting worse and worse. Mandli had no idea how Baba was going to give darshan. They said, Baba, you should just, postpone it. You're not well. How are you going to, you can't even get out of bed. Baba was even confined to his bed when he insisted that this go forward. And famously, as you know, Baba then remarked, well, don't worry about it. I will give darshan, but I will be reclining. In any case, what could they do? If Baba was going to give darshan, he was going to give darshan, whatever. And so they kept planning, and we kept planning. And then January 1st happened. And I will say, some people, wonderful in their hearts, felt drawn to just go immediately to India, and had that blessing of seeing his body in the tomb in those 7 days. And even Mara asked me later why Elizabeth and our family didn't just do that. And I'd never thought about it before because I didn't think about going at all, and neither did Elizabeth or Kitty. And everyone has a different relation and different input. I mean, why? Well, because Baba said, don't come until your appointed time. He said it several times. Now, Elizabeth and Kitty and Margaret, I mean, I'm sorry, if that's what he said, that's what you're going to do. It doesn't matter whatever else happens. Now, that's their response. Others had a different response, and they had a wonderful experience. So there you go. Everybody's different. But growing up with Elizabeth, I would never have thought of it. I'm going, Baba called, and I'm going to go in April, I think it was, but not before, because, and why am I going to go? Well, his body is not there, right? So why am I going? And well, that never occurred to me not to go. He called. That's why he called. And I said yes. I said yes, Baba. And then Baba had said and sent this message to us. Baba said, I will give darshan no matter what. So that's what Baba said. So that was it. So I went because he called. And now, when I arrived at Guru Prasad in April of 1969, outside that same room that I was outside in 1962, right? The same room, same veranda, same line of people taking shoes off. uh, I had no expectations, none. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. I was there because Baba called. That's all. I'm there. I'm in India. And that's it. And then I entered the room, and there was his chair at the end of the room, empty. Well, it had a garlanded photograph of Baba on it, otherwise empty. We sat down, and at precisely 9 a.m., which was the uh, appointed time, Erich called out loudly, "You have kept your appointment with God." And my turn came to pay my respects to Baba. I slowly approached the empty chair. I glanced at his image, and I bowed low to the ground. And when my head touched the pillow, the fragrance returned. And it was Baba. And with my head still there on the pillow, I started to weep, joyful tears. And I remember my heart crying out, "Baba, you are here." Uh, so now, before I say a few things share a few things at the end and then ask for your uh, whatever you would like to say, I think now we should have silence with Baba for these 15 minutes and honor that time. Uh, 56 years ago when he laid aside his physical body. Uh, and pay tribute to the body that has made it possible for us to recognize him in ourselves. So with that, let's have the silence. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Years ago, I read out to Elizabeth this little biography that I had written for the same book, Treasures, my mother's little book. She said, write a brief biography of Baba. Well, I was quite young, but I'd never done anything like that. But I sat down, I wrote it out. And fortunately, Elizabeth was still around. And I decided, well, I should read it out to her. She would surely find anything that I hadn't gotten right or make suggestions. At the same time, I was a little apprehensive because, you know, um, what if she didn't like it and all that. And she had lived with him so much. So what am I supposed to say, about Baba? So that she couldn't say better. Anyway, I went over to Del Ruba at the appointed time, and there she was. We were alone in the living room, and she asked me to read it out. It's not very long. So I read it out to her, and she sat there listening very quietly. And I finished. And there was this silence. She was just simply sitting there looking out. And I thought, oh no. Am I going to have to do it all over again? I waited. And finally, after a long pause, she looked up and she looked at me and she said, very beautiful. And I was so touched. There's no one in the world, you know, um, except Bob, of course, but I mean, no one who I respected more or wanted to please more than Elizabeth. So I was very happy. But then she said, there's only one thing. And I said, well, what's that? I called her Auntie Boo. I said, what's that, Auntie Boo? And she said, well, you say that Baba dropped his body. I said, yes, yes. January 31st, he dropped his body. She said, well, she said, I think what you should say is Meher Baba dropped his physical body. I said, all right. And that was the only change she made. So I made it. I wasn't entirely sure why, but I made it. And later I realized, thinking about it, that as I was sharing with you earlier, with a physical body or without a physical body, the avatar or the beloved is fully present. If he leaves aside the human form, it changes nothing really, except in the flow of his work, whatever that is. And then when I was in India, I had a chance to ask Erich. I said, Erich, we hear all this that, about Baba saying that he will be fully active or whatever the term was for the next 100 years and his advent and so forth after he leaves his body and he returned in 700 years. I said, what are we to make of that? After 100 years, is he, no longer as present with us? And Harry says, no, no. He says, yeah, no, that's not it. He said, yeah, I can tell you what he said. I said, what did he say? Baba said, the avatar gives himself freely now, but after 100 years, he will have to be approached. But he is always available. That's what he said. He is always available. Yeah, remember that. Have you noted it down? I said, yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, take it down. That's what he said. I said, all right, I took it down. So his presence doesn't change, But what might change, I guess, if you want to look at it that way, is our readiness to recognize him, to recognize that he is in our midst. That changes. Uh, but he doesn't change. He doesn't come or go, or he's not more here or less here and at any particular moment. At least that's what he says. This is all a dream. This is all a play, a show. It has nothing to do with reality. Reality is, Baba's here. He is. Actually, there's nothing else. The way Elizabeth used to put it, which always struck me growing up, she would say sometimes, Baba is in the now. Baba is in the now, by which she meant the eternal now. And then reading later the account of Baba being in the barn in 1958. Now, I was with Baba in the barn in 1958 on 2 occasions, but most of what was read out or Baba said, was when I did not comprehend at the time, except for when Baba gave out my wish. That I remember. But other than that, I had to look back and see, what did he say? And one of the things he said in the barn was, Baba said, what happened yesterday? Nothing. What will happen tomorrow? Nothing. All happens now. This experience of everything happening at this moment is knowledge, wisdom. It has nothing to do with the mind, with reason. Mind says, it was yesterday that Baba was here. Baba gave us a discourse, and we all listened. And the children had a party. And mind also says, tomorrow we will have a performance. But one rare being knows that there is no such thing as yesterday or tomorrow. There is the eternal now, from beginningless beginning to the endless end. There is one moment only, the eternal now. He who experiences the eternal now finds all doubt, worries, everything dissolved like mist, and remains in eternal bliss. So how do we live with Baba in the now? Well, Elizabeth, who said that, did it as much as anyone I have ever known. I mean, she lived with Baba in India, she and Kitty, for those years and so forth. And so Baba, of course, his training was such that for those who were ready, they had to live more and more in the moment with him. That's why he kept changing plans. That's why he did what he did. In terms of whether it was his humor, whether it was his any of his ways, were all to turn their consciousness away from the illusion towards the reality and to be in the moment with him now. And I don't know who was ready for that or not among those who lived, but I don't know them all. The only person I knew or grew up with, except for Kitty, which was Elizabeth, and she of everyone that I knew, and Kitty also, but especially Elizabeth, in my experience, she seemed to me, as a young person growing up, she seemed to me to be living each day of her life as though it were the only day of her life. That's how it felt. Seriously. She, I don't remember, she didn't talk about anything in the past. I mean, if someone were to ask her at lunch or something, visitors, and they would, natural questions about, well, what was it like, to drive Bob on the Blue Bus tours or this or that. And sometimes she would say something like, well, she said, I think I've written about that somewhere. And that would be the end of it. I mean, I'm not saying she wouldn't ever say anything, but she would deflect the past. The past was the past, and in the present, she wanted to be with the people who were there, and it wasn't as though they talked about anything particularly profound, at dinner table or lunch. I mean, it was very light and uh, just very sweet. She liked to talk about places in the world, but she didn't dwell on the past, and she never, ever, ever, would talk about herself unless she was absolutely pushed to say something personal. It was just not her nature. And as far as the future goes, you think, well, certainly she has a big stake in what's going to happen in the future. She and Norina created this place and for Baba, and they put their whole lives and their heart into it wholeheartedly, and the Maher Center and all this. So certainly she's concerned about what's going to happen, and how is it going to be, and so towards the end of her life, I took the occasion boldly, because I rarely ask her anything personal. I know she didn't like it much, I but I asked her, I said, Andy Boo, what's going to happen in the future? I mean, it's hard for me to imagine actually the center without Elizabeth and Kitty. To me, I just I couldn't picture it, what it would be. So I asked her, but when you're not here, what will it be? What do you want it to be? How do you envision it being the future? And she looked at me and she said, well, yes, I see. Well, that's what we have a board for. I almost laugh. I said, okay, I guess that's right. She doesn't, and that was it. But she also said during that conversation, she said, I don't think we have anything to worry about. Baba, you know, she said, Baba runs his center. She says it's a good thing, because if he didn't, we would all be in trouble. And she, so she said, and I asked Baba, about how it would be taken care of, and Baba said, don't worry about it. Don't, Baba said, I'm taking care of it. And he indicated, there will be millions, millions. Baba said, I will do it. And that was the last time she ever thought about it. Um, but what she did do is, without, it wasn't a practice exactly, it wasn't a spiritual discipline, it was just her natural way of living, would be to listen to what Baba would say in every moment of the day. That's that's when she heard what he wanted, and the person who came through the door, and the events that would happen. Baba was speaking, he was saying something, and that's when she knew what to do, is when he spoke, and he spoke in every moment. As far as she was concerned, She didn't make it into a philosophy. That was just like breathing for her. This is what Baba has given. This is all that there is. Everything that happens is his will, and we respond to his will as best we can, and knowing that this is what he wants. If a crisis happens at the center, well, that's what Baba wants. Let's just do something about it, if we can. If we can't, then we leave it to him. On and on. That was her complete attitude to life. Uh, uh, I sometimes would picture what would happen if the entire center, God forbid, were to burn down to the ground, some terrible fire. I said, well, what would Elizabeth do? What would she say? This was her whole life that she gave to this to build for Baba. And then I pictured her. I pictured her coming getting out of the car, looking at the charred remains, and saying, "Well, I guess we'll have to find some place to stay tonight, won't we?" Now, I don't know if that's what she really would have said, but it would have been so in character to her, because everything was his. I mean, what is the center? It's nothing. It's some buildings, and it's his. He wants it, fine. He doesn't, fine. But now what do we do? What's the practical thing we do right now? Right now, what do we do? So that's the closest I've experienced of living with somebody, being around someone who comes close to living in the now. I mean, Baba was the now. He didn't live in the now. He was the eternal now. Uh, and Mandli were like his breath and his parts of his body. They were so in the now, because that's their existence. But I didn't live there. I didn't see that, but I did see Elizabeth. And Baba said once, he said, when every moment is rich with eternal significance, there is neither the lingering clinging to the dead past, nor a longing expectation for the future, but an integral living in the eternal now. Only through such living can the spiritual infinity of the truth be realized in life. And then another time he said, the way to union with me, or with God, Baba said, you must take a daring dive into the eternal now. A daring dive into the eternal now. But how to take the dive? And all I can gather is that Baba's answer is one thing: surrender. That's the dive. Surrender completely to his will. If, as he says, everything is his will, everything is the divine plan, why not? There's nothing to worry about. There is nothing except him. Why not? That's what he says. Die now, he says, because that's the only thing there is. Die to self, he means. And surrender is that. This is everything is your will. And he indicated the path to surrender is through remembrance that everything is his will. That's what my wish is all about, really. The whole of my wish is all about how do we keep constantly in mind that this is all his will. How do we do that? And Baba says, here it is. This is my wish for my lovers, that they must carry out this wish of the beloved. He didn't say, I hope you will, or try. He said, no, he gave this in 58, as you know, he said, carry this out, carry this out. And the more I read it, the more I realize what the heart of it is. Carry it out means, every moment, remember, this is all my will. This is all my will. Never forget that. And then Baba says, if you do that, you're free to live only for me. We're free to love him. We're free to remember him. Baba says, that is your job. I'm giving you that. That's your job. He said, everything else is my job. Oh, wait, what about elimination of the ego? My job. What about sanskaras? Not your business, my job. All of it is his job. What is our job then? Remember, love, surrender. That's our job. That's it. It's all he wants. Baba says it's a very simple thing. Well, it sounds simple. And I said to Erich, I said, because when he brought this up, he said, I said, Erich, you say surrender, surrender. You keep reminding me, but I said, I don't know. How can I do that? I'm not ready for that. I don't know how to surrender everything. And Erich looked at me, rather annoyed, and he said, wow, what? What is it? He said, just do it. I said, well, Erich, I don't know. What do you mean? I mean, I don't know. I'm not ready to. No. He says, yeah, just do it. I said, what? Erich said, yeah, here's the thing. Do it now. Now. Yeah. And then tomorrow, do it again. Next day, do it again. Yeah. It's like that. And then one day it will become natural. It will become like breathing. He said, just do it. But you have to do it. I said, all right. I finally understood what he meant. It's not whether I'm ready or not ready. Yeah, I love him. Well, then do it. Oh, now I wake up tomorrow. I guess I didn't surrender. Well, okay, do it again. And so on this Amartithi, which is the eternal date in the eternal now, may beloved Baba give us all the grace to let go, to surrender everything to him now. Because Baba is in the now. Jai Baba. Now, if we, if you want to if you have time, I'd like to say something or ask questions, fine. Otherwise, that's fine also. But it's been wonderful being with you. Yeah.
Charles, did you notice a difference between how Baba lived within you from the January 30th and then before that till after that when he had dropped his physical form? And if so, what was it?
Oh, yes. Well, it's a wonderful question because, yes, looking back, it becomes even more clear to me that I was freer after he dropped the body to be with him than I was before. The part of me that, had him in India, located there, and maybe we would see him or something. That what is he going to write and say about this or that if the occasion arises? Um, well, also I had become accustomed to internally asking Baba, or following something in myself. So both things were there. But after he left the physical body, I was free. And there's something great about that. Because I felt he was more available to me in a way. Now you could say, oh, yes, well, you get the Baba you want then, right? Not the Baba who's going to say you shouldn't do. Well, that's fine. I mean, I don't mind how people see it. And I can see why they would think, because all of us live in ignorance. And so, I live in ignorance. I don't know what he really wants and so forth. But at the same time, uh, this is what I do gather from him. Trust him in yourself. Trust him. Yeah, I mean, whether other people think it's right or wrong, or whether even later you think, oh gosh, well, how did I ever think such a thing? Because I was meant to think such a thing. Do I think it was me that did that, or was a mistake? Or no, because it was all written in his plan. It was like I'm playing I'm reading I'm a part of a script, that's written. So and the more I realize that, the more I realize no, being more aware of him in this moment is not understanding him better, or yes, he wants me to do this or he wants me to do that, because that doesn't matter. We just do whatever it is we think is best and give it to him, and that's it. Because whatever it is, if it turns out to be, oh, a terrible mistake or a great thing happens, same thing. It's what he willed. It's not what we willed. Baba used to say there are no mistakes with Baba. But when he was in the physical body, naturally the mind is such that you go, well, what would Baba want me to do? Can I write to Baba and ask him? Anyway, all that went. Now, sometimes it would be projected onto Mondli people. Uh, and I did some of that in those early years, particularly. And then Baba had to explode that eventually. Yeah, Baba didn't like it, in my view. This is me. This is what I've gathered. Baba, as he told the women, Western women in India in the 30s, he said, "Don't lean on anyone except me. Don't lean on anyone." And he said, uh, uh, see here, Norina, she leans on Heidi. I don't know whether he was just picking on people. I don't know if that was the case, but she leans, Heidi, from Switzerland. So she leans on Heidi. Well, what happens? Heidi leaves me. Heidi leaves me. Then what happens to Norina? Don't lean on anyone. And here's Nadine. Here's Nadine right here, sitting there. Nadine leans on no one. She doesn't get along with people. She doesn't lean on anybody. She's very fortunate because she has to lean only on me. It's so funny because it was true. So, yeah, he said, no, no, be friends. Baba said, be friends. It's good. You should be friends and all that. But don't lean on anyone except me. And that's how I feel now that, yeah, if he were in the body, then of course, he would want me to, unless my conscience, then I would tell Baba, Baba, my conscience is such, I feel you're saying to me here, and that happened. And Baba wanted that. He, Erich has examples, as many of you know, in his stories of living with Baba, where he follows his conscience instead of obeying Baba. How's that? He follows his conscience. Why? Because that's where he feels Baba was speaking to him, to do his duty, to protect Baba. And if Baba said do X, and protecting Baba meant do Y, he would do Y. So physical body is such that it can, it's that dynamic. And when that was going, and I didn't have it much, honestly. So I don't even know what it must have been like for those who had it every day. But yeah, I was freer and to just be. And, you know, Eric said, they, um, they had to negotiate him. Yeah. Sometimes they wouldn't tell him things because they knew he wouldn't like it or he might get upset. I mean, they were very human with that body and that person, and he wanted them to be. That's how he wanted them to be. So it was a different negotiation when he left the body, and it was a different experience. I don't know if that speaks to what you were asking, but yeah, that's how it was. Hmm.
Jeff Abshel?
Hey,
Thank
Jeff.
you. Hi, Charles. Thank you for everything you're sharing. I have a silly question, but I want to ask it anyway. Why did Baba choose each of us?
Oh, well, it's not a silly question at all. It's a great question. Why me?
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
I've often had that question. I'm just saying that's a very common question in my life. Why me, Baba? Uh, and I can only say what Baba has said and what I've gathered. I don't know, but I mean, there are different ways of looking at it, I think, in life with Baba. And one of the way is to remember that uh, our being chosen to see him, for him to reveal something of himself, and that whatever moment it is, was in the divine will. It was already planned. I mean, it is. In other words, the divine will doesn't unfold exactly in time and space because there's no such thing. It just is. So everything that happened in the past, everything that is happening, everything that happens in the future, Baba says is now, and the will of God is now. So what we think of is Baba says, I know what's going to happen in billions of years to each of you. How do I know? Because it is now. That's how I know. Now, it's not, it is, that's knowledge, real knowledge. So any of us being chosen by Baba in a particular time and place and so forth, that already happened, if you will. That is happening, if you will, and it will happen. All of that in the same moment. So it is. It just is. Now there are other ways to think about it, and the human approach to it for me, when I was growing up with again Annie Boo, Elizabeth, so mother once asked her, uh, Elizabeth, how is it that that we're so fortunate that we are with him and we recognize him and all that. And you know what she said, which I thought was so sweet. She said, "Well, Jane, perhaps we were in the crowd when he passed by as Jesus." And I thought, oh, yes, that's right. You see, because the other part of the story is that it's a story. Baba says it's a story. And the story of illusion, of creation, uh, is ruled by karma and sanskaras. That's the law of illusion. Now, God's will is greater than that, but within the creation that runs according to that law and can't be changed, everyone's subject to it. But it's this. But another beautiful way of thinking about it is instead of the law of cause and effect, or the Baba called it the law of must, M-U-S-T. Instead of that, maybe we can think of it as just the story. It's the love story, and so that way we can enjoy it more. I think than I mean it's a less dry way of imagining our lives. With him, but it's a love story that unfolds, and that at some point, we Baba loved the story of Majnun and Laila for this reason. He loved the story of the longing that Majnun had for Laila, and how that longing and longing and longing led him finally to union with God. Baba had that story told in 58 in my presence, and again in 62. He loved it so. In fact, he told it in 58 himself. So it's a story. It's a beautiful story. Baba doesn't want the sweetness to be taken out by us thinking, well, this doesn't matter, that we don't do anything and it's all God's will. That's supposed to free us to enjoy the story. It's not supposed to spoil the story. I think the story is spoiled when we think it matters what we do or we don't do, or, oh my God, if I don't do this, then this will not happen. Well, that's not, Baba says that's not true. You can't do anything. So why not enjoy? It's a love story after all. Enjoy. And so in the point in the story comes when we recognize him, it's the meant to be. Some people say, well, God will do this or God will do that. God's will is that he'll do this and he'll do that. Well, actually, Baba says that doesn't happen. God doesn't do that. Somebody asked Baba, what about the assassination of Lincoln and Gandhi, for example? Why did God will that? Why did God do that? And Baba said it had nothing to do with God's will. That's not how it had to do with karma and sanskaras. Yeah, it was destiny. But God's, yes, overall, everything is the will of God. But I mean, it wasn't that God sat down or someday said, oh, okay, now I'm going to have Lincoln assassinated or whatever. That isn't the way God operates in Baba's understanding and Baba's revelation of how the will is. The will just is. And the assassination it was in the original whim, there it was. I said, well, Erich, if all this just is and we can't do it, I mean, can't Baba change it? I mean, I mean, it just seems so, for a Westerner particularly, oh, you mean this is it? This is it? And Erich says, yeah, but he can. His grace is there. The avatar's grace is there. He can, but he doesn't do that. Very rare. If he does it, everything changes. So he doesn't do it. Very, very rare. But he said, if he does do it, even that is accounted for in the whim. You see, even that is accounted for already. So you can't get out of it, right? It's just is. So that's how we are. We are in the moment of our story where we recognize, because that's when the script says it's time for you to recognize them. And we play our part. That's all. Yeah. That's how I gather from him. I don't know. It feels like that to me, Tom. I mean, it does. It feels like that. Does that answer, Jeff? Yeah.
Yes, that answers that question and many others. Thank you very much.
Good. Good.
Thank you.
Well, Baba answers. I don't have any answers. Fortunately, Baba has given us so much insight into how things are. Yeah, at this time. When he comes again, he'll give us more, or he'll give us something completely different. you know, he, because the mind needs feeding, so he's going to give us something. But this is so beautiful. This what he's given from the very first early days. Reading the discourses he gave to those high school boys, Meher Ashram in the 1920s. I mean, from the very beginning, how Baba talked about this being a dream. You're living God's dream, Baba says. And what a wonderful, liberating thing. Because, oh my God, it's all determined. Well, yeah, I mean, you could say that if you think of us as having a free will or something, or you think we're separate individuals and we have, but Baba says, no, that's not true. You're not. You're not that. So if you want to think of a will and you're determined to have a will, then remember you are God. And ultimately you realize that everything that happens is your will. So if you want a will, okay, you can have will, but realize God, and then you'll see it. But until then, no, you think you have free will and you have to live that way. I mean, in the sense that people have to make decisions, they have to make choices, what is the best to do and all that. I mean, with Baba, we should be free from worry about the result of it. That's what Baba says, you do your best and then don't worry, it's mine. If it works or doesn't, you don't have to worry about it. But for people in the world, of course, they have to make decisions. And so that's what Baba calls apparent free will, right? I mean, apparently they do. And he said, people have free will. He told Erich this, people have free will to the extent that they want to maintain their separative existence. That's how I have free will, I have free will is because we want to maintain the separative existence. So fine, do it. That's fine. But Erich says that's fine. You have to do it. But just, if you ask me, he says, what Baba has said, no, it just is. There's no, you don't exist. So how can you have a will? Really, how can you have a will if you don't exist? So there is that. So it's hard for Westerners, I think. I'm speaking for myself. It's hard. We want to have a will. Oh God. Oh.
Do you want to have a moment of silence before we bid each other adieu, or
Whatever
beloved
you.
Baba's prayer?
Well, that's nice. Let's do that. Let's say the prayers.
Okay. People can feel free to unmute. I've muted everybody. And unmute yourselves.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Go for it, Charles.
Beloved God,
Beloved God,
help us all to love you more
and more,
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 and more,
still yet more,
yet more,
till we become
till we become
of union with you,
union with you.
and help us
help
all
us all
Help us all
hold fast
to,
to Baba's
Baba's
Dharma
Dhamma
to Baba's Daman
till the very end.
in the end.
of the Dharma of Baba,
Maya Baba Ki Jai.
EJ.
of
Maya
our
Baba
Dear Baba
Baba,
Ki
EJ.
Jai.
Wonderful to be with you all. And
Jai Baba.
Thank
you,
you, Charles.
Hey, Baba.
Baba.
Hey, Baba. Thank you.
thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Thank you.
So grateful to Baba. Yeah.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
I'm gonna end the meeting now. So see you anon.
Thank you for recording.
Thanks, Dyan. Jai
Thank
Baba.
you.